Season 2 of the So You Want Your Kid to Be Great at Sports podcast. My name's Kurt Bowyer and I'm joined with Ben today. Hi, Ben.
Hello, how you been?
All right, yeah. So it's been a couple of months since series 1, and I'm going to go series and cross between series and season. But series 1, what have you been up to?
Well, we've seen quite a lot of each other actually over the summer. So
Yeah.
this is just for the listeners' benefit, I guess. We've had an exciting summer for mini athletics. This podcast is powered by mini athletics, if you like, and it's been exciting as we've been trying to get the brand of mini athletics further across America. But with that has come some downtime with the family and enjoying seeing them moving, getting active and trying to do things like that and enjoying the great outdoors, which has
That's
been
interesting,
fantastic.
isn't it? Actually, because is there some kind of activity, sport, whatever, that's relatively new to you and your family that you've been doing over the summer?
I don't think it's necessarily new. The big thing over the summer has been swimming. Obviously, being on holiday and having access to outdoor pools and allowing the girls to be in a pool a lot more and splashing around playing. It's actually, and we touch about this on the podcast quite a lot, it's actually really helped them with their confidence. So two big things have happened. Amelia's swimming's come on leaps and bounds, and Billy is the youngest one. Before we went on holiday, she wouldn't jump into a swimming pool. Now we cannot stop her jumping in. The last few days of the holiday was spent literally jumping off the side into the pool, getting out, jumping into the pool. And I think that comes from, and again, we touched on this on the podcast, that comes from, we didn't give her swimming lessons to do that. It comes from just allowing her to have fun.
Yeah.
Exploring the water, having fun, splashing around with other kids. Obviously, she went to a water park, but she was just allowed to explore. A few little hiccups, choked on a bit of water every now and then. But she
Well, actually, there was
realised it was not going to hurt her and just got on with it.
the water park was interesting, wasn't it? Because we went there together and there was this huge wave machine. This was in Florida. A huge wave machine, and it's not like your standard kind of center parts wave machine. It was a wave machine that was on steroids. It was
Terrifying.
it took me off my feet, and I was just in like the baby end.
Yeah. What was it? 6 foot, 7 foot waves? But
I know, but somebody's definitely been injured in that for sure.
I saw a few people with less skin on their knees than when they started. But what was interesting was all the kids, especially your two and Amelia, my eldest, all the kids were running towards the waves and all the adults were running away from the waves, which I found quite interesting.
Yeah.
Lack of fear or judgment or experience. I don't know what you put it down to.
Yeah, I don't know either. But stupidity.
Exploring, having fun and stupidity.
So that actually reminds me of a point in series 1 where when we asked each other, I think we drew it out as to do some kind of different sport, and you drew out table tennis and I drew out judo. Did you do it? No, and I didn't do it either. And I was thinking in the car on the way to the office today, why didn't I do it? Because we've been talking about and we're big advocates of trying new things and trying new sports and stuff like that. And then I just kind of realized, actually, I just didn't want to. I didn't really fancy it. It's not really my thing. It's never been my thing, martial arts. And I just didn't really want to. And then that brought me back to a podcast that I was listening to yesterday, which was the High Performance podcast, with his name escapes me actually.
Jake Humphries.
He was interviewing, the big tall guy who was, what was he on now? He was on a game show on BBC One. Now, this is a challenge for you. He was on a game show on Channel One, and it was pointless. It was the big tall guy.
Richard Osman.
Richard Osman. And he was on this high performance podcast, right? And controversially, he said, if something to the similar to, he doesn't really mind his kids being on the screens. He doesn't really mind them playing games, because if like Call of Duty and all these games were around when he was young, he would have loved that, because you get introverted kids that don't really want to go out and play and do all the sports and activities. They just want to play and be on a computer. He said, actually, it can be quite good for them. and he didn't discourage it. So that's an really interesting point to start with, isn't it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think when you're talking about something that can be seen as controversial as that, because it's a bit of a subject, should kids spend so much time on screens or not? I think he's obviously talking from his own experience of letting his kids use screens and sees the benefit. I can only talk about my own kind of experiences. Our girls don't have traditional computer games, if you like, that were around when I was younger. They're just not of that age. They're 6 and 4. They do have tablets, which we try and limit, and we certainly don't let them use at home. We kind of use it for our convenience of traveling, like on aeroplanes and cars and stuff, if we've got long drives, and we let them use iPads. But we try and limit it simply because I prefer them to be active and using energy and exploring sport. And that's because of my passions, but also because since we last recorded episodes of the podcast, we've had a big change in our house. Me and Rachel, my wife, have both been diagnosed with ADHD, late diagnosed with ADHD, and it shows that there's traits of that in our girls, so neurodivergent family. And we've just found that the girls have a lot of energy and they need to burn that energy up. And if they get onto computers, they tend to hyper-focus, and that can cause situations to arise where they can't regulate very well. And I think that's because they've gone into that hyper focus of being on the computer. And the other hand, from my experience when I was younger, as an only child, I look back at my childhood, which is part of what you have to do as an ADHD assessment, was to look at how I spent my childhood. Now, as an only child, I'm not say sent to my bedroom, but I chose to be in my bedroom playing on computer games. And for me, looking back now, I feel it has taken me a long time up to this point now to be able to feel comfortable in socially connecting with other people, because I didn't, or I wasn't encouraged to go out and make friends. I was in a football team when I was younger, but that was the only connection I kind of had outside. I didn't go out and play with my friends on their bikes and running around in playgrounds. And actually now, as an adult, I don't particularly like playgrounds. And I feel that probably a lot of that has come from the fact that as a child, I spent a lot of time on my own playing computer games. So I can see its benefits, but it's not something I want to encourage my girls to experience because of the fear that they might end up like me in that sense.
So here's your question then. Why didn't you go and play table tennis?
In honesty, I would think one is lack of facilities, in my opinion, for table tennis. I will touch on that point. We actually did, if you remember, kind of play table tennis on holiday.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah.
But that's another subject. So me and Kirk at the water park played the football version of table tennis, if you like.
Tech volley type thing.
Yeah. So in my opinion, I think for me to try a new sport, and we've talked about this with athletics a little bit in the past, me and you, is I think there needs to be easy access to facilities. So I'm not the type of person that is confident enough to necessarily say, right, kids, let's go and play table tennis. Let's go and find a facility to play table tennis, because there's a fear that you pay to go and use that facility and they don't like it. And then I'm just standing around, well, what's going on now? And I get a little bit kind of frustrated, the wrong word, probably, lacking confidence in being in that environment.
Okay, let me rephrase the question then. Have you ever played table tennis before?
Yes.
Did you like it?
Absolutely loved it.
Okay, right. Okay, because actually, when I think back to the judo thing, I remember this. So I was about 7, so not that long ago, really. And I love how you were straight faced when I say it's not that long ago when I was 7.
I'm not.
Just bypass you. I love how you just take everything I say as
serious podcast, this.
So, yeah, when I was around 7, I went to I think there was a leaflet at school to go to karate, right? So I went to karate, got kitted out, and cost my mum a fortune. She took me there because you have to get kitted out and get your white belt. And then I got in there, and then it was quite intense, it was quite noisy. It was like, kind of thing. And I
don't know whether is that true or is that a bit stereotypical?
No, because I actually remember learning this. And if you listen to the podcast, it's like this kind of punching thing where you have to turn your hand like this. So I only went to one session. It was good. I learned a bit.
I could see it paid off, yeah.
Yeah, and I could see everybody was on mats, and they were all facing the instructor, and they were doing. And well, I got a bit overwhelmed by it, really. And then to cap it all off, my foot was not in the right position. I suppose I was a little bit sensitive kid, and the instructor just kind of kicked my foot into the right position. So what? That no, I'm not. I don't want that.
Yeah.
And finished. And I said to Mum, I don't really want to go back again. And Mum was like, bloody hell, I just paid. Well, she didn't swear, obviously, she's my mum. But she said, goodness gracious, I just paid God knows how much for your kit. And then we had to try and return it and all that kind of stuff. So going back to that question, why didn't I do judo? Well, to be honest, I think it was more of a childhood kind of bad experience of that sport. So I didn't bother doing it. And that brings me back to what this podcast is all about. Because so you want your kid to be great at sport? Well, you've got to do it in the right way. You've got to take your kids to the right sessions and make sure that those sessions are really inspiring and great and super fantastic. And so they're going to get the best experience of that sport. Because I know that martial arts, actually, what I know now about martial arts, I've never done it, but I know that people rave about martial arts and it's so great and it's super positive. I just had what probably was a bad experience. It was in a bad environment and that put me off for life. So going back to series one and what this podcast, or this episode is all about is sports. You know, what sports haven't you tried as an adult and why? So let's flip the question. Is there a sport that you've loved to try?
Yes, and I actually isn't too long ago that.
I better know what it is.
Well, go on then.
Can I guess it?
Go on then. You can have 3 guesses. I'll give you 3.
Okay. I'm gonna go with paddle.
Got it in 1?
Yeah, that's because everybody wants to try paddle at the moment.
Yeah, it's the in thing, isn't it?
Very much so. Very much so. I was invited by someone to invest in a paddle business the other day, and I said no. But it is that big that I'm not only being asked to play paddle, I'm being asked to invest in the thing.
Yeah, I actually saw a news report, I can't remember what it was the other day, that a British farmer has realised that he will make more money annually by turning his field into paddle courts than he would from growing crops.
I suppose it depends where he is. I mean, if he's in the valleys in Wales where there's nobody living there.
Yeah, you've got to think of that, but good use of space. Going back to your question, yes, paddle. So I actually had the opportunity to play on holiday. You invited me to go with your family to play paddle, or was it pickleball? It was pickleball
Right.
or
So
paddle?
yeah. So in the States, pickleball is huge. So we always go and play. Whenever we're in the States, we always go and play pickleball. And we really like it. Claire really likes it. So my
Yeah.
wife really likes it because we play tennis quite a bit and Claire doesn't really like tennis. Tennis is, in my opinion, harder than pickleball.
Yeah.
So when she picks up a pickleball, it kind of levels us out. So
Yeah.
I'm sure she wouldn't, there's things that most things Claire is better than me at. Happen to be tennis, I am better than Claire at. But in pickleball, it's leveling out. And that's the same as paddle, really. It's very accessible.
And I think this is a really key point because my feeling is I am not very good at tennis because of previous bad experiences. So I've never had access to play tennis. Tennis wasn't something that was done at my school. I've never played it as an adult. I've done the occasional mess around with friends on holiday, but I've never been very good at it for whatever reason. And I guess that's down to lack of knowledge, lack of intuition and knowing how to play tennis very well, and also lack of coaching and access to playing it regularly. Because like with any sport, you have to play it regularly to get better. I really want to play paddle or pickle ball. And I think the thing that is stopping me is assuming that it is very much like or is as difficult in my mind as tennis. And I'm not going to be very good at it. And for me, it's not through lack of motivation to try. I think I've had bad experiences of tennis and I'm muddying the waters between the 3 sports, if you like, and thinking I'm not going to enjoy it. And that's kind of one of my takes on it. You've got to treat each sport individually, but also just go into it with a bit of an open mind. A kid would go, oh, I'll have a go at that. And they wouldn't really care. Well, they shouldn't care about the outcome. They should just kind of, like, it reminds me of Amelia. She's been to sports camps this summer. We've had to put her in other sports camps whilst we've been working. And she's come home and her favourite sport, she said to you the other day, has been tennis. She loved playing hockey. She loves being in the pool. She gets to try these different sports, gymnastics. And that makes me really proud because she's making those choices herself. So I would love to try pickle or paddle. I haven't due to probably bad experiences that are ingrained in my.
Okay. When you go and play paddle, I've got a theory on paddle and why it's so popular. First, I think it's been swept up with a bit of a fad, but that doesn't mean that it is one. I think that it's going to be a sport that sticks around, and it sticks around for a long while. The second thing is, like I said before, how accessible it is to play and be successful at it pretty quickly. Because we are, as a society now, in my opinion, quite instant. We want success pretty quickly. We want to know that we're good at something
100%, yeah.
pretty quickly. And paddle gives you that because you can play pretty quickly and you can win pretty quickly, if you're paying the right people. But even against your friends, and it's an equal, it's a leveler, and that's another thing. Then I'm going to go a bit left field with this one. Sport, in my opinion, also has other things. So environment, are you happy in the environment? Now, being in a paddle court, it's quite a nice environment, and you could put a paddle court anywhere, and it can change that environment and be nice. It's glass, it looks good, and you can go in it. So it looks good. So you want to be in there. That goes back to my karate experience, where it was in a horrible, dingy place, and I remember
A
it.
dojo.
Pardon?
A dojo. That's what it's called, isn't it? A dojo.
Yeah. No, it was a community hall. There was no dojos about that. I don't even know what dojo is.
You need to watch Karate Kid.
I watched Karate Kid actually, but the remake.
Yeah, well, you should be familiar with the term dojo. Anyway, move on.
Yeah, I wasn't paying much attention. But anyway, so the second thing is environment. And then the third thing is sounds. When you hit with a paddle and you hit the ball, it makes this really crisp, lovely sound. Same as when you play tennis and you hit it well and and you can feel it and you can hear it and it's gone into the sweet spot of the racket. And it's a beautiful thing. That doesn't happen very often because that's hard to do. If you're my standard, that's hard to do. So it doesn't happen very often. But that sound, once you get it right, but paddle, you're always getting that sound, and it's a really nice sound. It's like that kind of, I can't remember what you call it. Is it PSR or something like that, where you do bubble wraps and stuff like that? Yeah, that kind of sound. Billie Eilish uses it a fair amount in her music and stuff like that.
AMSR.
Yeah. Yeah, what does that say? PSR.
Yeah.
That's good.
You're on about profit and sustainability rules in football, you've gone the wrong way.
Yeah. But that's the second. So if you put all these things together, you've got a perfect storm. And this is really key for getting your kids into sports. If you want to get your kids into sports, and we go back to that conversation with what was his name again from
Richard Osman.
Richard Osman. Because you do have to get you at some stage. I'm sorry, Richard Osman. I do agree with you in the sense that you're never going to get a kid off screens completely because they're such fun things to do. And my kids are on screens; they'll play on the iPads and all that kind of stuff, and they will do that. And it's a fun place for them to be, and we allow it. It's fine. But you can't do that all the time because you're going to become unhealthy. And it's not, and you need to move your body and all these things. So you need to find a sport that they're going to really love. So take all of these things into account when you introduce them to sports, the environment, the coach, even to the point of the sounds and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the athletics, we have music playing out of our own music when they come through the door. So the sounds are really positive and encouraging. And all of these different things you have to think about when you're getting your kids into sports.
It's a really good point because I think the thing you've got to look at is what is happening in the brain when a child or an adult is going through an experience. Now, I read a very good book a few months back called The Dose Effect by TJ Power. Wow. D standing for dopamine, O oxytocin, S serotonin, E endorphins. Now, you give a child a tablet, what's going to happen is they're going to get a very instant hit of dopamine because they're playing a computer game. It's instant gratification and they're like on a high because they've got this experience that they absolutely love. So they're flooding their brain with dopamine. The thing that you've got to look at is you can get dopamine from sport with things like you say, the sound off the paddle racket and the excitement of winning a game. But also along with that, they're going to get other chemicals. They're going to get the other things. They get oxytocin because they're mixing with other people. They're getting serotonin because they're outside. They're getting endorphins because they're doing exercise. And I think this is one of the things that needs to be probably looked at. And a mini athletics session perfectly gives them a good dose of those brain chemicals. I think yes, tablets have and computers have benefits, but they're not giving them all those things. And I think as human beings and the brain, we need to make sure that we're getting all of those things and building those things up over the course of a day. So I think it's a really important point. You've got to look at sound, you've got to look at environment. Is it outdoor sport? Is it indoor sport? Because we need to look at serotonin comes from, you can get it from being outdoors in nature. If you're playing a computer, arguably, and if it's a tablet, mobile device, you're going to be stuck in a room. That room potentially is going to be dark because, the graphics look better if you switch the lights off and close the curtains. And how good is that for a child? I think that's a really interesting point. The environment is underestimated when it comes to sport.
Yeah. And especially if you're a coach as well, think intelligently about this. Think about the environment. Think about different things that you can bring into your session that are going to enhance that. Did you call it the
Mm.
dopamine effect?
The-
What else other than just instructing them to be better at sport is actually going to inspire them to want to play that sport as opposed to being in a dark room with their PlayStation 4, whatever. And that's where you come in. That's where you have to inspire them. And so it was a bit sad when I saw that podcast because I felt as though the point was being missed.
I mean, just to interrupt you on that one. So you and Claire obviously created mini athletics. Now, when you go back and look at that early journey of creating mini athletics, it was more, I guess, than just the class. We want to do a sports class. You settled on athletics and you designed this fantastic program. But it's very clear when you are looking at the program that a great deal of thought has gone into, the group session, the fact that you've got to have a group of children to do that because that creates that community. It creates that oxytocin because you're getting the children playing with other children. And we're talking play, which we could talk about more in other episodes. But the other thing is the environment. So when you're saying, right, we're going to create this fantastic program, this imaginative based athletics program, what environment do we want to run this in? Now, we all know that there has to be a certain space for the children,
Yeah.
but what considerations went into the environment? Because we know you could do it indoors and outdoors, but I've looked at venues to host mini athletics classes, and sometimes you go, well, there's a lot of space here. I could run sessions, but is there enough light?
Yeah. And
Is it going to feel comfortable?
Yeah, and that's key because is the parent going to feel comfortable? Because if they're not going to hang around because they're
No.
going to want to get out of bed on a Sunday morning or whatever and take their kid to their sports class because it's a really nice place to be. It's a nice place to be for them. It's a nice place to be to see their kid thrive and enjoy themselves. They're going to want that. So you have to think about how does this place look to the parent? And that really goes back to times when Claire and I were looking for classes for Kalen when he was 2. I mean, there were some really awful places, and actually they were just dingy. There was no light coming in. There was no natural light coming in. Sometimes there was rubbish on the floor and stuff like that. And we just thought, like, what? We'd just come back from Disney World. Did you
Yeah.
see a piece of rubbish on the floor at Disney World? Did you
No.
see any dust in Disney
No.
World? I mean, it's a pretty impressive place.
Yeah.
And you want to go into that place and yeah, Disney World is all about the kids because we're going in and we're going doing these rides with the kids, but it's such a great place for us to be and see our kids enjoy themselves and be really love life because it's such a lovely place. And that's so key with sport. It's so key.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing here I just want to mention is now So last year, actually, as an example, last year, my youngest son, Seamus, he started to play football. So he's 7. So he's out of the mini athletics program now. He's 8 now. So we're like, what do you want to do? Because mini athletics is finished. You can do anything you like. And he said, well, I'd quite like to play a bit of golf. So okay, great, let's go and do that. And I want to see if I like football, because he liked playing around with his brother, and his brother. So that was good. So we took him to football, and our local village team, it was great in the summer, and then it went into the winter, and they were still using the same pitch with no floodlights. Well, they had this kind of makeshift security light, and it was so muddy, so wet, so cold, so dark.
Mm.
I actually said to the manager, are you sure this is safe? Because once you go out of the security light bit, you've kind of lost the kid, because you don't know where they are. There's a big and he was like, no, I don't think it is really, is it? I said, no, I don't think so. So, and he was great. He is great. He's such a
Well,
great
pull a
coach.
car up to the far end and you can stick your headlights on. That'll solve the problem.
Yeah, exactly. It was that kind of jump of the goalposts kind of attitude to it. So anyway, because Seamus was losing interest, he was like, right, he could come back absolutely caked in mud and cold, and it wasn't great. So we worked together to find a better place, like an Astro that had floodlights and all that kind of stuff, and that comes at a cost. But the parents were happy to pay, because they knew that actually the kids were not really enjoying it, and how long they were going to last, I'm not sure. So after they did that, it made such a world of difference, and James wanted to go to football, and he enjoyed coming back from football. So it makes such a difference. Environment is so important.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. It reminds me of when we were looking for venues for mini athletics when we first launched here in Birmingham. There's a part of our territory, if you like, territory is the area that we run mini athletics from, and it's in a really nice area called Barnt Green. So we really wanted to target this area, but there's very few venues. We basically looked at a venue, and I remember this. We turned up on this day. It was at the foot of the Licky Hills. It is, if you know that area. But we went into this community centre village hall, and this lady that was showing us around opened the doors, and we walked in, and we was like, "Oh, this is nice location, great size, look great." But the lady's like, "I'll leave you to have a look round," and think had security cameras, so we know that everything was fine. And she left us, me and Rachel. I just went, "It's a bit of a funny smell. I'm not sure."
Was it you?
No, it wasn't me. It
Okay.
wasn't Rach.
So
It wasn't the lady. It wasn't the lady. But I was like, "There's a bit of a smell." And the lady came back, and I said, "Look, I really like the venue, and it's within our budget, because we have to think as a business what the price is, the higher." And I said, "It's great. It's within our budget, but there's a bit of a funny smell. Like, it smells like wet dog."
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh yeah, that's because twice a week it's used by a dog training group." And I was like, "Yeah, we'll get back to you." And
Yeah,
it's
right.
that thing, like, you've got to think, are children going to want to come in and do athletics in a place that smells like dog? Do I want the kids crawling around on a floor that has had 10, 15 dogs in a week doing dog training?
Yeah.
They're not yet
Especially on-
trained. So you imagine what's on the floor at times. Yeah. And then the parents, are they going to want to stand there for 45 minutes to an hour smelling dog? And I'm like, no. So you do really have to think, you said about the football pitch, it costs a little bit more money, but it is so important that we are giving children a positive introduction to sport. And sometimes, because they're only young, their little brains are going to be thinking, I don't want to do athletics because athletics smells like dog.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
don't want to play football because I get caked in mud. These aren't things that have to happen. The people that are responsible for running the sessions, the coaches, the groups, the owners, they have to find the right environment to make sure that when that first experience happens, it's a positive one.
Absolutely. Great points. And I'm going to finish this podcast by saying about feedback, right? And if you're a parent that thinks something in terms of whether it be environment of the coaching session, maybe you have, just little things that you think could actually improve the session. Like from my point of view, it was just changing the location. It wasn't anything about the coaching or anything like that. I think it's really good to actually sit down with the coach, sit down with the organizer and say, look, I think we could probably get more kids in and start with solving their problem, because they're probably, they're going to, if they're doing it for a living or whatever, they're going to want to get more kids in. If they want to increase participation in the sport they got. Always start with, I think that we could, make the sessions better, or get more kids in by actually just changing the venue. And I know that the kids might enjoy that a bit better. And I think feedback is so key. Don't be afraid as a parent to give feedback back to the coach, especially if your kid is not enjoying it as a result of it. So I think that's a really good place to leave it.
I was making a note and having a drink while you made such a good point. I think it is a very good place to leave it. And I think it is really important that if you care about the development of your children in sport and the experiences that they have, and you want it to be positive, then we hope on season, or what we're calling it, season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, season 2.
Season 2 of the podcast, then continue to listen to the episodes. So you can head to your chosen podcast player and you could subscribe to the podcast to be notified of when new episodes come out. We are going to be putting clips out on Instagram, on the social media, and on the Mini Athletics YouTube page as well for you to watch full episodes. But if you feel like you're not able to approach coaches, you should be. If you're not able to approach coaches and bring these things up, but you think, oh, there's a really good point in that, then why not share the episode with the coach? Why not share the episode with the people in the groups you go to? Because we want to spread the messages that are coming out of this podcast. We plan, or have got planned, lots of other episodes coming up, and you can go back and listen to season 1 as well. But more episodes of this podcast is due to come, and we will speak to you all very, very soon.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much. See you later.